Alright, I admit I F up big this time. It wasn't intentional or planned, but in the eyes of my wife Carol, it didn't make any difference. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time sent my marriage into a downward death spiral, the only problem now being Carol F up a lot worse than I did, and hers was intentional. So here I sit in my car at the hospital, wondering if my male pride will make me close the book on a once great marriage. But let me start at the beginning of my problem. My name is Ken, and I'm the head purchasing manager of a midtown hospital. It seems about a year ago, the hospital decided to update their x-ray equipment. The outdated equipment was about 20 years old, and the head of the radiology department talked the hospital board into spending almost $250,000 for new x-ray equipment and an MRI. The bids were open to all American manufacturers, and after going round and round with the two top vendors, we decided on the equipment from Unity Incorporated. The only thing left was to visit the manufacturing plant and work out the final machine options and finance terms. Ken, I want you to accompany Dan to the factory and make sure he doesn't go too crazy and order too many options, my boss Todd told me. We're at the top of end of our budget this year, so I need to make sure we keep it under $250,000 as much as possible. It could mean a big bonuses for us come year's end, he told me with a smile. I'll do my best, he told his boss Todd. I've already asked for free freight and insurance back to Boston, and in this economy, I don't think they'll balk at it because they don't have the signed purchase order yet and know we could still change our minds. I told them I'd be bringing the order with me and that we'd finalize the details while I was there, Ken told him. Don't worry, by the time I'm done with them, they'll be paying me to take the equipment off their hands, he said with a laugh. That night, I told Carol I needed to go with Dan to finalize an equipment agreement and that I'd be gone for at the most 2 days. If everything goes according to plan, we'll be taking that winter vacation in the tropics this year, I told my wife. Don't make any promises you can't keep, Buster, she said, kissing me. With you gone though and me working late, I'll have to have your mom pick up Ronnie from school and feed him dinner Wednesday night. I'll collect him from mom when I'm done, that's all, she told me. I'll be glad when both of our jobs get back to normal, whatever normal is anymore. I took a hard line with the sales manager of Unity. He wasn't acting like a big P, only a little one. He got 90% of what he and Dan had asked for and handed them a signed contract at day's end. Everyone was relieved that it was finally over, and they told Dan and I that they would pick them up for dinner at 6:30 that night. Ken, I've got to head back tonight, so I'm catching the 7 o'clock flight, Dan told him. Make sure you bring back a set of instructional manuals so we can start employee training next week, he told me. I want to thank you for your help, and I'll let Todd know what a great job you did. Have a drink or two for me tonight, he said, heading for his room. The mood was festive at dinner, and the drinks flowed. I was relieved that I wasn't driving because by the main course I was half blasted. By dessert, there were only 3 of us left, the sales manager, head of tech support, and myself. The head of tech support was a female about 40 and was dressed more like a man than a woman. I finally got a good look at her when after dinner when she removed her sweet jacket and put it on the chair next to her. Damn, she'd been hiding a nice rack, I thought to myself. And can I count on you to get him back to his hotel tonight? The sales manager asked. I hate to be a party pooper, but I've got to catch a flight out first thing in the morning and I haven't packed yet. Enjoy yourself and stay as long as you want. The bills have already been taken care of, he told Ken, shaking his hand and thanking him again for the order. I was pretty wasted as I sat there looking at Ann. Not bad, short red hair, a decent body from what I could tell. If she wasn't so uptight, I thought, finishing the last of his drink. There's a dance lounge in the back with a great jazz band if you're interested, and told me. Or if you're too tired, I can take you back to your hotel, she said. Why not? The night's still young, I said, as we headed to the lounge. How we ended up on the dance floor, I hadn't a clue, but that's where we spent the next 2 hours. In each other's arms. We drank a bit more, danced, and the last thing I remembered was maybe kissing the back of Anne's neck as we glided across the dance floor. Let me rephrase that. She glided and I staggered at best. What the F? I said as I tried to open my eyes. Here was this girl, between my legs, as I tried to sit up, and pushed me back down on the bed. We only did it once last night, and I want to have one more before you leave, she told me. Besides getting F right now, I hadn't a clue where I was, only that what she was doing felt great. I was in no shape to help, so I just lay there and enjoyed what was happening to me. Looking up at Anne, She was a sight to behold with her flaming red hair, beautiful face, and body that would make most women green with envy. I only wished I wasn't so hungover. I lasted about 20 minutes before announcing and that I was getting ready. "And I'm done for at least a couple of hours," I said. "I haven't been with a man in over 2 years before last night," she told me. "You were so hot we barely made it into my apartment before you had me totally undressed. You kept calling me Carol for some reason," she said. It finally hit me like a slap in the face from a large shovel. I cheated on Carol. I was now fully awake and my mind was going a mile a minute. I needed to get back to my hotel, get packed, and make the 12:15 plane home to Boston. "Heck," I said. I looked for my cell phone, finally remembering I'd left it on the desk in my room. It was a quiet ride with and back to my hotel. We both apologized for the previous night's activities, saying that it never should have happened and that it was a secret we'd take to our graves. We finally ended up talking shop and about what each had to do now that the order was placed. "I'll be the one training your employees when the equipment is finally delivered," she told me. "I hope it won't make you too uncomfortable," and said, trying to give me forewarning. "Don't worry about it, Anne. We're both professionals, and as long as you keep me away from the alcohol, we should be able to handle it," I said, trying to add a little humor into an awkward moment. We said our goodbyes, and I raced into the hotel. "Heck," is all I could say as I looked at the 15 messages from Carol. The last one saying that she knew I hadn't spent the night in my room, and where the hell was I? It took me only 10 minutes to pack up and grab a cab to the airport. I thought about calling Carol but decided to send her a text message instead. This way I wouldn't have to answer any embarrassing questions before I got my story straight. "Sorry about not calling you last night. Got drunk and passed out. At the airport and getting on the plane. See you tonight. Love you." At least that would appease her until I got home, I thought. Carol had called the hotel all night and finally at 2 a.m. had one of the employees physically check my room, fearing the worst. Looking at my text message, she was relieved but pissed at the same time. "He's got a lot of explaining to do," she thought, especially since it had cost her a night's sleep, as she frantically wondered where in the hell I was all night. On the cab ride home, I was busy honing my story about the previous night in my mind, and that without knowing exactly how much Carol knew. I thought about coming clean from the get-go, but figured Carol would kill me if she found out about Anne. "God, please let me get through the next couple of hours," I prayed, "and I'll never stray again." I thought out loud as the cab pulled into my driveway. I was almost unpacked when I saw Carol in the doorway. "Well," she said with her arms folded over her chest. "I know you're pissed, and you have every right to be," I started. After the agreement was signed, we all went out to dinner to celebrate. I started drinking beer, switched to wine, and by the end of the night, I was drinking salty dogs. Somewhere between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, I kind of passed out at a jazz club, or that's the last thing I remember, I told her. "You passed out where? Because you never made it back to your room last night?" she said, in a pissed-off tone. "Where in the hell did you sleep last night, Ken?" she said. "I guess I stayed at the tech service manager's apartment," he replied. "You guess," she said, now almost yelling. "You guess," Carol spat out. "Cut the crap, Ken. Where in the hell were you last night, and think very carefully before you answer, because I'm going to verify it," she said. "I'm screwed," I thought to himself as I told Carol the truth, carefully leaving out the part of "and writing him this morning." "And you spent the night with Anne. Is that what you're telling me?" she now screamed at me. "Did you sleep with her, Ken? Goddamn it, Ken, did you F her? Answer me, you son of a b," she yelled as her arms flung wildly. "I thought and was you. You've got to believe me," I begged, and told me I kept calling her Carol all last night. I was so drunk I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. "You've got to believe me," I now pleaded with her. "You bastard," Carol screamed. "Is she just one of the that you meet when you're supposedly on the road working? Goddamn it, Ken. How many times have you cheated on me? Heck you. I wouldn't believe a goddamn word you said anyway," she yelled while beating her fists on the bedroom door. "Get the F out of here before I do something I'm going to regret. Just get the F out of my sight," Carol screamed while falling to her knees crying. "Goddamn it, Ken. I hate you so much right now. Please just leave," she sobbed. I tried to touch her head as I walked through the door, but she pulled away from me. I grabbed a change of clothes and headed out the door as my world collapsed in on me. 20 minutes later, I was at the Red Roof Inn by the hospital, sitting on the bed trying to figure out how I was going to fix this one. Or if I could. I was greeted with a hero's welcome when I got to work. Dan had told everyone who'd listened how tough I had been, and that they'd gotten much more than they'd even dreamed of getting from Unity. He's a miracle worker, Dan told everyone. I just smiled and tried to get caught up on my work when Todd came into his office. You outdid yourself this time, Ken. I've been instructed to tell you to take the rest of the week off, with pay of course, and for you to take your lovely bride out to the best restaurant in town, giving me a GERT certificate. I'm not going to say it's a shoo-in yet, but tell Carol to get her bathing suit ready because the two of you will spending 10 days in January at Sandals this year. Compliments of the hospital. I thanked him, accepted the gift certificate, and said I had a lot to do before he left work. Work, that's all I had right now. I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I went home that night. I saw that Carol's car was in the driveway and all the lights in the house were on. Maybe it had blown partly over and she was ready to talk. Sorry, no such luck. Carol had literally thrown all my clothes into the spare bedroom and had this wild look in her eyes as I approached. The only reason your clothes aren't on the front lawn is because of Ronnie, and I haven't made my mind up what the F to do with you, she said in a dead calm, controlled voice. But don't touch me, don't talk to me, and stay the F away from me, she said in a now louder voice. I started to say something when she cut me off. What about don't talk to me, don't you understand, Ken? She said, glaring at him. We'll stay in the same house for now, but just stay the hell away from me. Do you understand? I nodded sadly and went into the spare bedroom. It took me about a half an hour to clean up the mess and hang up my clothes and ponder my next move, which I frankly hadn't thought of yet. Ronnie came up to tell me that dinner was ready, and we walked down to the kitchen together. He knew something had happened but was smart enough not to ask, at least for now. The three of us ate in silence, and after dinner, I went back up to my new room and wondered how in the F I was going to repair my marriage. The next 4 weeks were hell. The only time Carol and I talked is when there was no other choice. Who was picking up Ronnie, what the F I wanted for dinner, and to tell me my mother wanted us over Sunday afternoon. I once tried to talk to her about us getting professional help, but she snapped back at me. I don't need any professional to remind me what a cheater I'm married to. She spat at me, walking away. The following week, Carol announced that she was going away for the weekend and that I was to watch Ronnie. I've got to get away and think what I want, and I can't do it with you stalking me at every turn. She was gone Friday night until Sunday late afternoon. I used that time to get reconnected with my son. We did all the father-son things you see on TV. We went to a ball game. We drove go-karts and ate out every night. I think I gained 10 pounds that weekend. Are you and Mom getting a divorce? Ronnie asked Sunday morning at breakfast. I hope not, but your mom won't let me explain what happened, I told him. I did something pretty stupid, but I still love her to death, and I think deep down your mom still loves me, I told him. Well, just fix it, he told me. You know how you're always saying you can fix anything. Well, fix this, Dad. Please, he begged. The two of us developed a plan that afternoon. Operation Win Mom Back. It would take our combined effort, and I wasn't sure it'd work, but we were headed for divorce anyway, so what did we have to lose? Carol came back and at least was in a little better mood. I prepared dinner as she asked Ronnie what he and I had done without her all weekend. She talked a little at dinner but said she was tired and went to bed early, alone as usual. I gave her about 2 weeks to say something about where she thought we were going, and when she didn't say anything, I put the next phase of our into action. The following Friday, I took off a little early. I got home and made 2 pizzas from scratch along with picking up a movie at the video store. Friday night used to be family night before all this started, so it was my intention to bring back a little normalcy into our lives. And it worked, a little anyway. Carol was thankful she didn't have to cook, said she'd had a tough day at work, and even liked the movie I picked. Ronnie sat on the floor and Carol and I sat on the couch, about 2 feet apart, but at least on the same piece of furniture. So it went for the next 2.5 weeks. Carol started to slowly thaw, and I got a bit more aggressive. The following week's movie was Ronnie's choice, last of the Star Wars series, and I made a bunch of finger food items that we could eat while we watched the movie. Tonight I brought out the big guns. I bought, not rented, a chick flick that Carol said she was dying to see. Ronnie groaned, but I told him he could have next week's choice. I went all out this week. Shrimp appetizers, a veggie and fruit tray, and steak shish kebabs. I wanted it all tonight. To give you an overview of the movie, A guy from out of town hitches up with a single mother. He helps them out. They fall in love and decide to get married. On the way to the church, he comes across a major accident. He pulls a family out of a burning vehicle just as it explodes and throws him across the road. The guy comes over, holding him up. The hero whispers something into the father's ear before dying. The last scene is the father and his family walking into the church. He tells the bride what her fiancé had done and that his last words were, "Tell her that I loved her from the first moment I saw her. I'm sorry I can't be with her right now, but I'll be waiting for her if it takes till the end of time." Everyone in the movie is crying and I can feel my eyes watering up. I think back to what my marriage was like 6 months ago, and now it almost makes me cry. I feel Carol grab my hand and I look at her. Her eyes are full of tears and I mouth the words, "I love you," to her as she puts her head on my shoulder. What a lame ending, Ronnie says out loud. "Thank heavens I get to pick next week's movie," he says, climbing to his feet. We cleaned up the kitchen, put the food away, and I finished up my glass of wine. Carol climbed the stairs and momentarily looked back at me before continuing her climb. At least she held my hand tonight, I thought, feeling quite proud of myself. Finishing up, I turns off the lights and headed up to Ronnie's room. "Remember tomorrow, we're going fishing with Grandpa, so don't stay up all night," he told me, as he walked to his room. Carol's bedroom door was closed, as always. I paused for a second in the hallway outside her door before entering my bedroom. Within 45 minutes, I was fast asleep dreaming about something in my past when I was awakened by a noise in the room. Looking up from my bed, I thought I saw someone standing in his room. "Carol, is that you?" I asked. "I just want to sleep next to you tonight, that's all," she said softly as she climbed into the bed next to me. There was no you-know-what, cuddling, or even words spoken as she lay next to me. We slept together for the first time in months. Damn, whom am I kidding? I didn't sleep a wink all night. I just lay there drinking in her essence. I could feel the warmth of her body in my bed, and it was quiet enough to hear her breathe. Every once in a while, she'd roll over and our bodies would touch for a split second that made me almost jump out of my skin. I wanted to grab her, kiss her, and tell her how much I'd missed her in my arms, but I didn't want to scare her off. Ronnie woke me up just after 7 o'clock the next morning. "Hurry up, Dad, or we'll be late," he said, pulling the covers off me. Damn, I was alone in my bed again, not remembering when I'd fallen asleep or when Carol had left my bed. Did I dream it? I asked myself as I felt the side of the bed she'd slept on and put my face to the sheet and sniffed. I could still smell her on the sheets, which made me smile. I could smell the fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen as I descended the stairs. Carol was doing something at the sink, and Ronnie was talking a mile a minute about how he'd be bring home fresh fish for dinner. I caught Carol's eyes as she smiled at me. Right? She smiled at me. My heart was racing at that moment. "Come on, Dad. We're late," Ronnie announced as he opened the door to the garage and bounded out. Carol handed me a large brown bag. "Lunch for the two of you," she told me. I was about to leave when she came up beside me and kissed me on the cheek. "That's for last night," she said with a smile, and went back to cleaning up the kitchen. "We should be back by 6 o'clock. If we're running late, I'll call," I told her as I walked into the garage with just a little more bounce in my step. We caught nothing all day. We had a few bites, but in the end, we were coming back empty-handed. I knew Ronnie was disappointed, so I took a slight detour to the local fish market. I had him pick out 2 fish of his choice, and we headed for home again. He proudly displayed the 2 fish, and all Carol could do was smile. You see, when you go freshwater fishing, you can't bring home 2 saltwater bass. But Carol said nothing. I cleaned them, cooked them on the grill, and we ate on the patio. I was feeling pretty good right about now. Carol shared my bed almost every night after that, and Thursday morning, she was still sleeping in my arms when I awoke. My son informed me that morning that Friday family night was off for this week. He and a few friends had obtained a copy of the latest and greatest new video game and were having a sleepover at his buddy's house. I was disappointed because of what happened the previous week, but told him I'd live. Carol said for a change, she would prepare dinner and pick up the movie. Well, I guess Friday night was still on. I was a little late getting home. A training session for the new equipment went a little longer than anticipated. I could smell the Mexican food, my favorite, as soon as I walked into the kitchen. "Something smells great," I announced as I took off my suit coat. We haven't had Mexican in a while, so I whipped a taco salad, nachos, and fried ice cream for dessert, she replied. Let's eat before the movie because I don't feel like cleaning the carpet of taco sauce tomorrow, Carol said, now setting the table. I went upstairs, changed, and came down in sweats and a shirt. Carol had already started to dish out the food, and I grabbed a bottle of wine from the refrigerator, and we started to eat. She was more talkative than usual, so I just followed her lead. I answered all her small talk questions and finally asked how work was this week. Damn, I felt like I was on my first date in high school. I was just finishing my ice cream when Carol told me, I made dinner. You do the dishes so we won't have to deal with them later. I'll get the movie ready. With the dishes done, I found Carol on the couch, remote in hand. She hit play and our night of recovery began. It was a chick flick love story, with one exception. It was graphic. I don't know where in the hell she got this move, certainly not at Blockbuster, because it was soft P at best. There it was right in front of you. We started watching it just sitting next to each other, but by the end she was uptight next to me and was holding my hand. For some stupid reason, I was trying to hide the large tint I was making in my sweats by crossing my knees first one way then the other. Damn. I felt like an embarrassed teenager out on his first date with a hot girl. Well, that was interesting, Carol said, getting up from the sofa. I'm going to bed. Be a dear and lock up for me, she said as she headed upstairs. Well, at least she sat there holding my hand, I thought to myself. I locked up and headed upstairs to my room. I guess it's just me and Rosie and her 5 sisters tonight, I said to myself as I undressed and took out a tube of hand lotion. I jumped a foot as he heard, "That won't be necessary tonight," from a voice just behind him. I started to stutter and say something, but Carol put her finger to my lips and told me, "Don't say a word." She led me into what used to be our bedroom and kissed me as we stood at the foot of the bed. I peeled her nightgown off as I kissed her and let my hands roam the body I hadn't touched in 2 months. It was like making love with your wife for the first time. All the passion in the world waiting to explode, and the two of you both wanting this moment to last forever. Our lips met and made love to each other for the next hour. I was trying to come up with just the right phrase when she broke the silence. "I missed that," she said with a smile as she kissed me again. We never moved and fell asleep in that position. She woke me up somewhere around 3:30, kissing my face, and we made love with a little more this time. I cradled her in my arms and fell asleep again. There was no way I was going to let her loose this time. At about 9:30, Carol grabbed me and pulled me into the shower, laughing as I attempted to pull her back into bed. We washed each other. Without even drying off, Carol pulled me into bed. I started with her lips and kissed my way south. We made love through the entire weekend nonstop. I had more in the next 2 weeks than I'd had almost in the last 2 years. We did it in almost every room of the house except my son's room, see. We were hot and heavy in our bedroom when she suddenly stopped. "Just lay back and close your eyes," she told me. "Did you like that?" she said with a smile. "Right, I did. What was there not to like?" I told her, pulling her onto the bed. "Do you love me? Would you ever leave me and Ronnie?" she asked. "How can you even ask me a question like that?" I replied, "I love you more than the first day I met you, hon," I said, giving her a kiss and hug. And that's the way I stayed for the next week and a half. Dumb and stupid, but in love. Carol said that her parents would be watching Ronnie Friday night. She was a little quieter than usual, but I figured she'd had a bad day at work. I'd make her forget about all that in a few hours. I was changing into shorts and a t-shirt when Carol came upstairs. "Can we need to have a serious talk?" is how she started. "I've known about something for a week, but couldn't figure out the best way to tell you. So here it goes, I'm pregnant." It took a minute for what she said to register, but I jumped to my feet, kissed her, and swung her around. Only then realizing what I'd done. "I'm sorry, hon. I don't want to hurt the baby," I said with this huge, shit-eating grin on my face. "Kin, it's not your baby," she replied. I remember sitting on the bed, and it was like someone was speaking to me in a foreign language. "Hon, for a minute, I thought you said the baby wasn't mine," Kin said, looking at his wife. "I'm sorry, Kin. The baby's not yours. It's just a horrible mistake. But I know we can get through this, honey," she replied. Carol, adding instead of subtracting on a checkbook is a mistake. Adding salt to a recipe instead of sugar is a mistake. F someone else and getting pregnant is no mistake, Carol. I already know how, when, and who is the father, Carol. Ken shouted as Carol backed up into the doorway as Ken stood up from the bed. It happened the weekend I went away, Ken. And there hasn't been anyone since, Carol said, trying to sound as sincere as possible. All right, we know how and when. Now who was it, Carol? Did you just pick up a guy in the bar, take him upstairs and did it? How did this happen? I screamed, getting hotter by the minute. It wasn't anything like that. I took someone with me that weekend. I thought we were careful. I guess I was wrong. Holy F, Carol, I said, trying to stay at least a bit in control. Who the heck did you take with you? I want his name. I can't tell you that, Ken. He's married and I wouldn't want to ruin his marriage over this, because I was the one who asked him. At that reply, I started screaming. For Christ's sake, Carol, you don't want to ruin his marriage. What do you think you've done to ours, Carol? I can't believe this is happening, Ken said, covering his ears. Not now, not now, I screamed. You've killed it, Carol. Can't you see? I said, now crying. Remember, you were the first one to cheat, she reminded me. I was drunk and thought I was having it with my wife. I screamed at the top of his lungs. I didn't take some toy to a hotel for the weekend and get knocked up, I told her. Well, we're even now, and we'll just have to make the best of it. I've talked to the father and he's going to pay all my expenses because by the time I realized what was wrong with me, I couldn't have an abortion. It was too late. At that, I lost it completely. I snapped and pushed Carol from the bedroom. With my fists, I destroyed the entire room, furniture and all. I was screaming and smashing everything in front of me until, in utter exhaustion, I fell to the floor in almost a drunken daze and stared straight ahead without seeing anything. I never heard the two policemen break down the door or saw the look of horror on their faces as they took in the carnage of the room. I felt my hands being wrapped with cool, wet towels, but emotionally and mentally I was somewhere else. I felt someone lay me down and I remembered seeing lights appear and disappear as I came in and out of a D-induced sleep. According to the Baker Act, you can commit someone for 48 hours if you feel they are a danger to themselves or someone else, and that's what Carol did. She rode in the ambulance to the hospital, but was told that it would be better if she left. Without anything on her, Carol called a friend who picked her up and took her home. She walked upstairs and turned on the bedroom light. It was all gone. The bed, dresser and mirror, night tables and lamps. They were all smashed and there was blood everywhere. My hands were cut to shreds and the policemen had wrapped wet towels around them to try and contain the bleeding before the paramedics arrived. They took me to the closest emergency room, sedated me, and rushed me to surgery to repair the damage. By Saturday afternoon, I was awake and talking to the doctors and a shrink. How would you react if your wife tells you that she's pregnant with some other guy's kid and won't tell you who the father is because she doesn't want to wreck his marriage? I said in a loud voice, looking at my hands for the first time. You didn't do any permanent damage but are going to have a few nasty scars, the doctor told me. Not half as nasty as the scars I've got inside from what my beloved wife did, I replied. I noticed another doctor in the background taking notes, saying in a loud voice, yes, I'm pissed off as a motherfucker, but I'm not going to go home and kill the cheating bee. Are you getting it all? Or should I slow down a bit? I said, almost smiling. I don't know what the F I'm going to do, but I won't be doing much until these heal, I said, holding up my bandaged hands. They couldn't legally keep me after 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. I never called Carol, but just took a cab home by myself. I rang the bell twice and Carol opened the door and rushed to grab me. With my hands at my sides and without any emotion, I said in a dead calm voice, Carol, get your hands off me and don't you ever touch me again. Do you understand? I thought you were dead when you wouldn't answer the bedroom door. That's when I called the police, she sobbed. They told me they wanted to keep you for 48 hours so you wouldn't hurt yourself anymore. I'm so sorry, Ken. I love you, she said, now openly crying. He just pushed by her and went upstairs. My son Ronnie was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Mom said she screwed up big time, and you went a little nuts, he told me as we both looked at what used to be the master bedroom. Looking at his dad's bandaged hands, he gave him a hug. What can I do to help? He asked. Give me a hand with your mom's clothes, I replied. I want them out of here and into the guest room, he instructed his son when he found he could barely maneuver his hands to pick up the smallest items. It took about a half an hour to sort through the clothes strewed around the room and lay Carol's stuff on the bed in the spare room. Ronnie then reattached the clothes rod in the closet and hung up Ken's clothes. All the smashed dresser drawers went to the curb along with the bed frame. By 8 o'clock, I had a box spring and mattress on the floor and 3 drawers that kind of worked for my socks and underwear. The last thing Ronnie did was to pick up the broken mirror and vacuum the floor. The room wasn't perfect but would work for the meantime. The odd thing was, Carol never came upstairs the entire time. When Ronnie and I came downstairs, Carol was still in the living on the couch crying. "I'm ordering pizza. You want any?" I asked. She just nodded as Ronnie called in our order before getting me a beer from the refrigerator. We ate in silence and before I went upstairs. She tried to say something, but the look I gave her shut her up. I kissed my son goodnight and thanked him for all his help, including the box of plastic bags I'd be needing until the bandages were off my hands. For the next 2.5 weeks, it was AB. I showered with plastic bags on my hands and refused to let anyone feed me. I took a thick rubber band and strapped a fork to my hand. It hurt like a son of a bee, but I was no one's cripple. I told the people at work I fell into a plate glass window, so everyone pitched in and did my menial tasks, including typing all my purchase orders and letters. I was hailed as a king when I came back after purchasing the equipment, and now I was the wounded vet. It couldn't have gotten any better, at least at work. 16 days after my accident, the bandages and stitches were removed. "Go easy on your hands," the doctor instructed me. "They're going to be stiff and sore for quite a while," giving me a medicated salve to put on twice a day for soreness. I thought of using it for another area that was sore and needed attention, but it was way too expensive to waste. The upcoming Friday, Ronnie conveniently was absent. He was staying at a friend's house, I was told. I didn't want to be alone with Carol, but it couldn't be avoided. After dinner, and more than a few glasses of wine, she started in on me. "You're going to have to talk to me sometime," she told him. "I've told you I'm sorry, and I know we can work through this if we talk to one another," she said in her most convincing tone. "My way of talking or yours?" I replied to a puzzled Carol. "The way I tried for 2 months using syllables and words," he told her. "Or like you, who took AF Buddy away for the weekend and got knocked up instead of talking to me," he spat at her. "Now I'm going to have to watch that bastard child grow, and there's nothing I can do about it," I now shouted at her. "I understand your anger," Carol answered him. "But you were the one that started it," she reminded me. "When I did it, it was unplanned. I was drunk and didn't have a clue what I was doing," I said in a matter-of-fact tone. "However, you planned your weekend getaway and F around on me for 3 damn days, Carol. Would you have even told me about that weekend if you hadn't got pregnant?" I asked her. Carol nodded no. "I thought not," Ken said in disgust. "But I love you, Ken," is all she could say. "You couldn't love me that much to do what you did, Carol. The only reason I'm still here is because of Ronnie. You're going to be worthless in a few months, and I don't want Ronnie to suffer because of what you or I did. So don't get your hopes up about you and I getting back together," I told her. "As far as I'm concerned, you're a stupid cheating bee that F up trying to give me your version of payback. That about sealed the fate of our rocky marriage." I wasn't ready to write it off completely, but saw no future for Carol and I. So the next months came and went. Carol gained a lot of weight and was miserable, so I stayed away from home as much as I could. Both her and my parents found out, how could they not, and chastised her at every turn on how she could have done such a thing to a wonderful husband. The only thing we still did, as a group, was family night. Ronnie insisted on it. So every Friday night I s it up. We had dinner and watched a movie together. We were at least in the same room. Through it all, Carol still wouldn't tell me who the baby's father was. It was when she started meeting adoptive parents that I got my first clue. She didn't want me involved in the process, like I would have wanted to be anyway, so she'd drive herself to the meetings. I hid and saw the first 2 couples and finally put 2 and 2 together. Both couples she interviewed were Latino. We knew only 2 Latino couples, a deacon at our church and the head of customer service where Carol worked. I knew Andy well enough to know he'd never step out on his wife, but had only met Robert a few times at company parties. I decided to go with my gut and have him checked out. It only took 3 days to get the lowdown on Carol's weekend adventure. She paid with a credit card, so I knew where, and with the hotel security tapes, I had the guilty party nailed. He was married and had 3 kids, so he should have known. You don't F around with another man's wife. Carol was due the third week of January, which put a damper on our holiday plans. We bought stuff for Ronnie, but we didn't exchange gifts for the first time ever. At work, and had started doing the employee in-house training the week between Christmas and New Year's, so at least I had someone friendly to hang with during that period of time. "I'm so sorry about you and your wife," she'd tell me. "We were so drunk. If I'd been sober, I never would have let it go that far," she said one night after dinner. "I only hope that you and your wife can patch it up before it's too late," she told Ken. "And what's your schedule after the first of the year?" I asked one night. "I know you're done with training by the second week of January. Do you have any accrued vacation?" he asked. "I've got 3 weeks left that I have to use by the end of second quarter. Why do you ask?" "I've got a 10-day, all-expense-paid trip to Sandals and want to know if you'd like to go with me," I said, now smiling. "If I don't use it, I lose it," I told her. "Do you think that's such a good idea with what's going on in your life right now?" she replied. "I need to get away, and I can't think of another person I'd rather be with than you right now," I told her. "All right, count me in," and replied. "But remember, no strings or commitments," she told me. "That works for me. We'll just be two hot bodies sharing the same room and bed, that's all," I said, smiling ear to ear. And that's what we did. And I spent 10 days doing you-know-what and eating only when necessary. On the evening of the 9th day, after a particularly great session, and came back to the bed with 2 chilled glasses of wine. "I thought you might need this," she said, handing me a glass. "You know this is going to end soon. Where do we go from here?" she asked. "What happened to the no strings?" I replied. "That worked until day 4 when I gave up my and everything else," she told me. "I think I have some real feelings for you. I can't say love yet, but some strong feelings," she told him. "To be straight with you, I've had the best time in years, and the thing with you has been fantastic, but until I finalize with Carol, I can't move forward," I told her. "Next week she's due, and after that I will make my decision. I only hope you won't write me off in the meantime," he told her. "I'm going nowhere, and even though we're more than a few states away, where there's a will, there's a way," she told him. We were both a little quiet on the flight back. It had been a wonderful trip, but we both knew it wasn't reality. We kissed goodbye at the airport as I caught her flight back home, and I picked up my car and headed to what had used to be my happy home. I told Carol I was taking someone else on the vacation that was supposed to have been hers and mine, and she cried for 4 straight days before I'd left. I had separation papers drawn up, and an alienation of affection suit against Robert was in the works as well. Payback is AB and then you die, I thought to myself, but I didn't have to wait long. 2 days after returning home, Saturday, Carol went into labor, and I took her to the hospital. I dropped her off at the emergency room and called her mother. No way I was going to be there for the birth. 9 hours later, she gave birth to a baby girl. Sunday morning, I dropped my son off to visit his mother, and I headed out to get my pound of flesh. Robert, his wife and kids were walking out of church when he was served. I'd paid extra to have it done on Sunday. At first, he didn't have a clue what was happening until he read the first paragraph. His wife, reading over his shoulder, saw what the paper was and started yelling at him, creating quite a commotion in front of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. "You bastard! How could you do this to your family?" She screamed and beat him with her purse and fists as their friends tried to separate them. I left. Robert was going to have his hands full by the time he got home, or wherever he ended up. I felt sorry for his wife and kids, but Robert had it coming. You don't see a husband by doing it with his wife and expect to walk away scot-free. Not going to happen. I heard later, through the grapevine, that his wife kicked him out and is planning to take him to the cleaners. 3 weeks later, she personally came over to our house and thanked Carol for up her marriage. Ronnie and I stood there shocked as this little Latino woman kicked the S out of Carol. As I said, payback's AB. Carol will get her own surprise this morning also, as she will be served with separation papers and given a copy of what Robert was served with as well. That should ruin her day. Me, on the other hand, I've now got an apartment 2 blocks from the hospital where I work, and movers are packing up my clothing and personal items as I sit here outside the hospital. I was going to witness the serving of the papers to Carol, but decided against it. Hell, I debated on even doing it until 2 minutes ago when I gave the guy the go-ahead. Will Carol and I get back together? I doubt it very much, and I won't stay together just for Ronnie's sake. Wouldn't be fair to any of us. She said she now realizes how stupid she was, and if she'd only talked to me, this all wouldn't have happened. The only reason I'm even considering giving her chance is because before I found out about what she did, Carol and I were the happiest we'd ever been, and the thing was out of this world. Is that a reason to stick together? Only you can answer that question, but for me, it's a big motivator. Like they say, have you ever had a bad BJ?